starting this thing off, I want to, keep it simple. For the layman, and I'm talking like a layman of the layman, what is Buddhism? This is a three-pronged question. So take your time answering it. What is Buddhism? What is a monk of Buddhism? And why live this lifestyle?
Yeah, let's go one at a time.
Okay.
So, what is Buddhism? Um, it can be fairly said that Buddhism is a systematic approach to recognizing suffering, recognizing the unsatisfactory qualities that exist in the human experience, and then transforming that suffering to freedom or to peace. So the praxis of Buddhism, the core of Buddhism is that there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, which is basically this constant desire. There's an ending of suffering, which is enlightenment, freedom, peace, and then there's a path to ending suffering. And that's in Buddhism, that's the Eightfold Path, which is broken down into three sections. Basically, it's Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Sila is virtue. So it's being a good person, doing good deeds, being careful about your behavior. And I'm sure people have noticed in their lives when they do things that they should do, when they do good deeds, their mind feels stable. There's peace, there's flexibility. But when you're doing what you shouldn't do and you're stressed and anxious, everything feels like a mess because you're not maintaining that skillful way of living. So once you have a virtue or you're living in an ethical kind of skillful way, then samadhi or meditation, concentration, relaxation becomes available to you. If you can't even live a skillful life, if you can't do good deeds, if you can't do less unskillful activities, then meditation is going to be basically impossible. So virtue, meditation, and then wisdom or insight. So once you start to live a skillful life, things calm down, and then you start to look into the mind, into the nature of what's happening with samadhi, with meditation. You gain an insight into the nature of the mind, the principles of reality, the mind, not just how things arise and pass away, how things are not separate from one another, how there is no separate self entity, for example, but you get an experiential insight into these understandings. So that's the Eightfold Path is about that, establishing yourself in that way of living, a way of life.
I see. Well said.
Is
So,
it key? So also, what is Buddhism? At least in the kind of Chinese traditions of Buddhism, there's a very strong tea culture. So now that I'm staying at this Mahayana temple in California, I really pick up that tea culture. So I've been enjoying that a lot. This is like a Chinese ripe pu'er tea, and it's such a treat. It's so lovely.
what is it called?
Ripe pu'er, ripe
Never heard of
pu'er
it.
tea. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a fermented tea.
Oh, yeah, I love tea. I really love tea. I'll toast to that. My own tea. I got some ginger chamomile black tea, organic. It's pretty good. It's not as fancy as yours, but I like tea. All
Might
herbs.
be, might be more fancy. Who knows?
So yeah, getting back to the discussion at hand, you described there's a good description of Buddhism. So now is being a monk the, I guess, most effective way to follow that said path?
That could be said, but it's not necessarily the case. So being a good Buddhist or being successful in practicing Buddhism, which is like transforming your suffering and getting a greater insight into the nature of your mind so that you can be more peaceful and more free, doesn't mean that you need to become a monk. Most Buddhist people are not monks.
Mm.
Um, a monk is something going way back to, ancient India, like the dawn of civilization, where once this agricultural revolution happened and there was everyone didn't need to be a farmer. Everyone didn't need to be hunting or gathering. So there were these classes that became available. And one of them was this renunciation class, a sadhu or a monk, which is someone who leaves society behind, it's really leaving behind the life of material development. So we call a monk a home leaver. And people who aren't monks are householders. They have a home, they have a car, they have jobs, they have these material development aspirations and responsibilities that go with them, with those, material situations that they choose to be in some cases. A monk is someone who is giving up the development of any kind of material wealth. So we renounce the material wealth and we take on the investment into spiritual wealth, which is our virtue, our goodness, our meditation, our introspection, contemplation, and our insight, into the nature of what exactly is going on here. What is reality? How do I transform my suffering? And at the basis of that is this willingness to let go, to give up our preconceived notions about what we need. Like, I need a house, I need a job, I need money, and to take on this journey of exploration. And that's what the Buddha did in his time, or in their time, was to leave home and step out of this material lifestyle to seek the truth. Not everyone needs to become a monk, but it is possible to become a monk. So like a modern, UK society or American society, what is a monk? There's not really any such thing. It's like a cartoon.
Yeah.
Or it's like a, anime kind of idea. It's very fetishized or fantastical. But in the Asian society, China, for most of history, a lot of history, Japan, Korea, Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, the Bhutan, Mongolia, all of these areas have this deep, rich tradition of monastic life, becoming a monk. So it is accessible if you find yourself to be a meditator and a Buddhist. Then yeah, if you want to give everything up, then you could become a monk. It could support your spiritual life. It's possible.
Yeah. Do you find that there is a obligation in a way through your insights, through your lifestyle, to share that with the world? Because I mean, that's literally what you're doing with your channel and with your Discord and everything else you do online. You don't have to do what you do, right? Not every monk has a YouTube channel. So do you feel personally that you almost have to give back in a way?
It's more about my karma. When I was growing up, I never stayed at one place for a long time. Like, my parents divorced when I was very young, and my mom was a single mother, and she moved around a lot. And my dad moved around quite a few times and remarried and stayed with my grandparents for periods of time. So, I probably went to 6 or 7 different school systems growing up, K through 12, something like that. So I never really had that rich, in-depth community, to be involved with other people with the same understanding and in the same path and in the same direction. And so my life as a monk gives me this platform and this opportunity to have number one, to be a generally good person, because I don't need to make money from people. I don't need to sell anything. I don't need to kind of make my way through the world where I have what I need. What I need is just offered through generosity. So I don't need to worry about that. So there's this opportunity to be kind of a generally good kind person who doesn't want to get something from people, at least not in a major way, because I'm not enlightened, so I have self desires. I like this, I don't like that. This feels good, this doesn't feel good. But there's a great joy in facilitating community and kind of people coming together and then going in the same direction together. It just brings me joy and it brings me energy. We have something in Buddhism called bodhicitta, which is this, it's kind of like a fire or inspiration to wake up, to transform, to refresh, restart. And coming together with other people on the path and being able to facilitate that and support that, just it lights my bodhicitta. It inspires me. It encourages me.
I believe it. Yeah, I feel that. There's power in numbers in a way with the sense of awakening. And it's just good to relate to others, to know you're not crazy.
Yeah. There's a community power that a lot of modern people just aren't using. Like we know how to use being alone, but we don't know how to use being in community, especially in the West. And there's so much healing and transformation and creativity that's really difficult to work with alone. But when you come together with other people, it's easier to be consistent in your meditation practice. It's easier to refresh and restart. It's easier to see your blind spots. It's easier to I'm really kind of depressed, or I'm like turned in today, like I'm kind of dark today. Well, when you're just living by yourself, doing and never interacting with other people, you don't necessarily notice that so much. But when you come to a gathering and when you're seen and heard, and when you see and hear other people, especially when they're really on the path, so they're like bright people, it supports a lot of freedom inside to see yourself more clearly, and then to transform what you need to transform.
Like the community acts as a reflection really toward yourself, and it's a back and forth reciprocal relationship in a healthy ideal community. Yeah, I get that. Makes a lot of sense. Do you feel as though you've reached almost like a second life, like a reincarnation in your life, since you've dubbed the name Bhante Varrapanyo? Because I've heard that from other people where, like, I actually don't know the name of the master, but I know the story where the students would ask him, how old are you? And this guy was obviously physically in his middle ages, probably a little bit older, and he would say, I'm 15 years old, I'm 10 years old. Like, he would only say as old as he was from the point of when he kind of woke up in a way. And then I've heard stories from, I think it was Ajahn Buddhadasa, I think, where he said, you will come to see this second life, like you will come to find your second life. And it was a whole lecture about like your second life in this body. So do you feel that, like, almost like you've reached another stage in your life, in your body, like this is like a reincarnation in a way?
It's got to be like that. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh, the great teacher, great master Thich Nhat Hanh, he spoke once about this concept of, if you look at a photo of yourself when you were 5 years old, you can't say that you're that person, that's precisely you.
Yeah.
But you also can't say that that's precisely not you.
I like that.
Those two interact. For me, stepping into monastic life, it's a big change in how I experience myself and how I experience the world, because I've been folded into a community. I've been folded into a society that is primarily focused on supporting me to continue my monastic life, and by extension, supporting me to support others to be on their paths. And I get to be in a position where I watch YouTube sometimes, I watch TikTok sometimes. I've seen movies. I'm not totally unplugged from the modern world. I know about the news and everything. I play video games with my nephew sometime when I see him.
Nice.
But
What do you play?
What's that?
What do you play?
Halo Infinite is
Nice.
okay.
I'm
And
just picturing you with a controller and the robes. Like it's a funny visualization, but yeah, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
well, mouse and keyboard are more for me, but also
Okay.
like some stick games, different party games that he likes. But wherever I go, like for these past, I ordained in 2018 in Thailand. So since then, these past few years, wherever I go, every day I wake up, I put on the robes.
Hmm.
Those are the only clothes I have. So even in the few periods of time when I've been outside of the temple context, like visiting family or something like that, it's only these robes that I wear. So I'm constantly brought back into this, as you said, a new life.
Mm.
So the person that I was before, I can't say that I'm completely not that person, and I can still see my connections, my karmic links to who I've all the kinds of different expressions that I've taken on in the past. But this life as a monastic offers me so much support that there is a richness and a kind of depth to this Bhante Varrapanyo
Hmm.
that I've kind of taken on. But also I'm not so attached to names.
Yeah.
It's people. Uh, so I oftentimes go to different communities, and so for a monk in Myanmar, the title is Uzin. For a monk in Thailand, the title is like Bante. Or in China, it's Fa Shi. It like the title of the monk. And in Vietnam, it'd be Tay or Tien Su or something like this. All these different names for monk. And mostly what I identify as is not Varapanyo, which is my Pali name, my given Pali name when I ordained. It means, great wisdom or bright wisdom, but as monk. So
Mm.
like my tag on Discord when I, do activities on Discord is just monk. And that's how I identify myself, and I can call myself Bashir Warapanyo or Tiensu Warapanyo or Uzin Warapanyo, whatever it might be. But it's what's more real for me is just that I'm a monk, and the name is much less important than the relationships that I have with people,
Hmm. Yeah, totally.
active, alive relationships, not so much the labels that someone wants to put on my name, whether they're good or bad or positive or negative, but like these lived relationships. And for me, that's really where the truth of my identity is,
Hmm.
not my idea about myself, not another person's idea about myself, but the active kind of being in relationship through my life as a monastic, as a monk.
Mm. Well said. I mean, do you think that's what life's pretty much all about, man? Like getting rid of the materialistic labels of who we think we are. It's more so just having this active relationships, these healthy relationships with a community that you can trust and that you can essentially you can love. Do you think that's kind of like the gist of it, putting it simply?
Using whatever forms are usable so that we can have those real in-depth relationships. But you shouldn't hold on to the forms. And also shouldn't reject the forms.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Yeah.
someone praises me or says, "Oh, you're so great, you're so wonderful." Well, at a given moment, a given situation, I can either use that or not. I have to deal with it personally. I have to deal with it for myself, but I can either make use of it or not. And the same with the negative things. Someone says something very negative or hurtful about me, about this form, right? This name. And I can either make use of that or not. But I still have to know how to show up and live my life from where I am. And that's where this formlessness comes in. So there's this big complex story about my life and Gary's life and the people who are watching's life, right? This big in-depth, multi-trillion-dollar production of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like this, there's some form in it, but this formless reality of just sitting here and breathing and seeing and hearing and noticing, being aware. It's like, it's effulgent. You know, it's so alive and dynamic, and no form can contain that, but it's contained in all forms. It's within all forms. And within that formlessness, that openness, all forms, they aren't separate from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And once we attach to just the form, and we think we're just the said form, that's when suffering arises, right?
Yeah, so I always encourage people about this perspective or this practice to refresh and restart. You know, from this present moment, now what?
Mm.
And because we have kind of the deep habit tendencies, you know, we have like this momentum behind our self fixation. It's not enough to just like stub your toe. You know, sure, that is or cut your thumb with an axe, which I did recently. Sure, that is a refresh, restart, but it's more that you need to have that really deep intention, meaningful intention to refresh and restart and put things down that you've been holding on to, and then go for a long walk from that intention.
Mm-hmm.
Each step, each breath, each heartbeat, each awareness of the body, each thought that comes up, and then you come back to your body, your breathing, being out in nature, this consistency of refreshing and restarting. And it really lets us soften that suffering, that judgment, that hatred, that animosity, right? That self-doubt, that self-criticism, that seriousness that we give to our lives and the relationships we have with other people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So flexibility and a softness and a playfulness that we can bring to life. But if we're just stuck in this rigid identity, you miss out on that. But a part of stretching that is being there with that rigid identity, and not fighting with it, not trying to understand it intellectually, but being willing to face it, sit with it, and be with it. And then the next time it comes up, you know from your experience, and you didn't fall into these negative coping mechanisms or whatever. You know, you didn't be, because you might have like an introspective, contemplative experience that's difficult in a social environment, but then you go back to your, you know, your room or your house, and you drown yourself in alcohol, or you stay up all night watching movies or watching pornography or something like that. Well, all of that awareness, all of that energy that that you had applied and had ready for you, because you kind of faced this experience that you had that relates to a deeper part of yourself, you just threw it all away, you know, to these habits and these activities that are going to cause more confusion in you, more destabilization in you. And now you've got to go through that all over again.
Mm.
So this is why it's very important we know how to really step back from unskillful coping mechanisms and do more things that are wholesome and generous and good, even though they might not feel as pleasurable as those coping mechanisms.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Mm. It's to really just become conscious of our actions here, playing as this character. It's to become aware of the damage or the potential damage that one could do through their virtues. Like you said, it starts off with having the right virtues, meditating on those virtues, and then from there, that's where the peace comes. But I like how you describe it. I never heard it like that. It's like a multi-stage process, like 3 stages. Like you cultivate the right behaviors for yourself, you meditate on that, and then from there, kumbaya, like the peace comes. I like that. It's like a simplified approach to life, and I think anyone can relate to that. It's all about just choosing the right way to play this game, choosing the right way to play your part here in this dance of life, this movie of life, you want to call it. so that it becomes a little more enjoyable, I guess, right? That's what it's all about. It's to truly enjoy this life, right? Or at least find a sense of peace. I mean, what would you say is what's this life all about, man? Why are we running to and fro trying to satisfy our senses and find the next pleasure? Like what are we trying to find? Is it peace and we just don't know where to look? Like, what would you say?
We have to stop looking and start finding, not looking, not searching, not chasing, not craving.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Especially, it's a human condition, but the modern technology that's available to us is sprouting up, stemming out from that human condition. So we want instant gratification and to release a dopamine to get what we want. It's like going to the fridge and finding what you want. So how do you stop going to the fridge? This is the main issue that people have with meditation. The moment you start to actually practice meditation, especially as a beginner, you have this experience of not getting anything,
Mm-hmm.
not finding anything, not even searching, but you're just sitting there. So you say, this is wrong. I'm done. I'm finished. This isn't the fridge. This isn't TikTok. This isn't my smartphone. There's nothing to eat. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to smell. There's nothing to taste. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. So how do we allow that to take place? Not searching, not looking for something, not being something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not that we do it or that I'm doing it, but allowing what's happening right now to take place. And it's kind of like stark fact that this is right now. It's so a lot of things in reality are so real that we can't even begin to grasp them. We can't, the human brains, like the physicality of the brain can't grasp that. But this is it. This is that moment of reality right now. No excuses, no debates, no protest about it. What you are experiencing right now, that this is it.
This is it.
This is exactly it. It's not some other way. It's not something else.
Mm.
And we say, well, this and that happened, and tomorrow's going to be like this and all that. Well, tell that to the meteor that comes to hit Earth. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, there's no wait a minute. So this is the home of birth and death. This is when you'll die. This is when you were born. This is when Abraham Lincoln gave his speech. This is when slavery happened.
Yeah.
This is when all human beings throughout space and time existed. Only right now, that's you. This is it. So to face that and to deal with that, you don't want to have a mindset of getting something out of it or chasing after something or trying to find something, because you just drive yourself crazy or to get yourself in a very confused, clinging state. Now it's a new way of chasing after something. So it's more, how do you stop being anything, stop being a spiritual practitioner and start breathing and allowing this to take place.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Easier said than done. Well said. But it's not hard. Like, to just be here now, right? It's not hard just simply speaking about it. Yet it's like something we're running away from being here now. It's like the mind is naturally, there's something in us that like doesn't want to realize the magnitude of the the holy situation that we're in, of the here and now, of that this is itness. There's something in us, just our monkey minds, our conditioning, whatever, just brings us out of that for some strange reason. I don't know why. And I don't think it's even beneficial to even think of the reason, but it persists. There's something there. Like our desire, literally, our desire takes us out of that here and nowness. Thinking you need something, you need to be somewhere, you need to be someone. And that here and nowness is really all you need. And I think that's what, to me, correct me if I'm wrong, a monk exemplifies to a layman or to other monks, is that we don't need anything. You don't need anything. Like, your life is a lesson to everybody. Is that everything that you think you need, you probably don't need. You just need some food and water, maybe. That's it. And then everything else is just secondary. But it is so simple, yet we overcomplicate it, It's, I don't know, it's just peculiar. It's very peculiar that we just overcomplicate our own happiness and our own peace. It's weird. We do it to ourselves. Yeah.
Whatever you do, whoever you are, whether you like the spiritual stuff or not, you can't avoid it in the same way that you can't avoid birth or death. Not possible. So what are you going to do when you don't know what to do?
Nothing?
You can try it. But not this kind of sticky nothing or this referential nothing.
Yeah. It's like wanting nothing, like expecting nothing. Doesn't mean like literally doing nothing, like sitting on a couch and just sitting there. It's like expecting nothing of this world, yet still being active. Like, there's still an act, but you expect nothing in return, in a way. Is that kind of what we're getting at?
Well, it's like dying isn't difficult. It's not difficult to die. The whole world can die right now, literally. This video won't even get posted. No one's going to see it, right? No clips are going to go out. It really is that easy. So you can't avoid doing nothing. But what you can do is perpetuate this cycle of feeling distracted or feeling confused, feeling depressed. You can kind of feed and nourish those seeds continuously and then experience the fruit from them.
Mm-hmm.
But the primordial ground, the core of the garden of our life is not something you can avoid and not something you need to do anything to experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of having that intention to be willing to let go.
Yeah.
And that there are avenues that are less sticky than the avenues that we know about and can go down. Right? So you know about the bar, you know about TikTok, you know about YouTube, you know about TV shows and movies, you know about Amazon, right? We know about smoking reefer, smoking Mary Jane,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a sticky situation. So recognizing pornography and masturbation and all of these things, sticky situation, we know about that. So if we have this aspiration to have a deeper connection to the truth or to letting go, we have to be willing to walk down pathways that are not directly related to those things.
Yeah.
So from my position as a monk, I would say that if you want to have a spiritual practice, put your phone down and go for a walk in nature. I've really been harboring in on this recently because the temple that I'm staying at, we just have this beautiful area around here that's just absolutely full of nature. and mountains and hills and all this.
Yep.
So it's extremely nourishing and wonderful to just put everything down and go for a walk with this willingness to let go and just breathe and walk.
Yeah. That's what the Buddha would do, right? Didn't he revere nature and just simply walking? Isn't there's a name for it in Pali, right? To just a walking meditation or walking in nature.
Well, traditionally, I've heard that the Buddhist monks they were always wandering, they were always traveling on foot outside of the range retreat. And the rule of thumb, from what I've heard, was 3 days under a tree. You wouldn't stay more than 3 days under one tree.
Hmm.
And so they would just wander and wander. But the Buddha did revere this solitary practice, to be in nature alone, where no one knows where you are. No one's thinking about you. No one's heading in your direction. You're not heading into anyone's direction, but you're just in nature alone and aware and breathing. People are paying $1,000 to go for ayahuasca retreats and these meditation retreats in different places. Spend it on some camping supplies,
Yeah.
and go camping and be alone with yourself for a couple days. That'll be an incredible access point for spirituality and meditation. Now, that's not necessarily for everyone. I'm not saying that that's better than Vipassana 10-day retreat or something like that. But it's an access point, and it's simple, and it's natural. And the path is about consistency, not intensity. I know people who, lived for long periods of time at these Vipassana 10-day Goenka centers, or people who have a lot of experience going on intense meditation retreats. They don't necessarily have success. You might have a special experience, but it doesn't get to the point of insight, really having a deeper seeing into of impermanence and no separate self, and no real true satisfaction to be found in this idea or that idea, or in this form or that form, or in this experience or that experience. Doesn't matter how high the experience is, it's ultimately not going to satisfy you.
Just another
So
experience.
it's about the simplicity and consistency to show up and be there with what's ordinary, with what's already here.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. I'm gonna keep that one in the back of my head. It's about consistency rather than intensity. I like that a lot. I mean, it makes sense. You kind of want to make your life a meditation. Kind of want to transform and orient your life in a way, because, like you said, if you're chasing the high in a way in a Vipassana retreat or ayahuasca experience, that's all you're doing is just chasing an experience, and that's just another attachment. So it's more so, to me, more beneficial to incorporate it in my everyday life. So it just becomes just like brushing my teeth or putting on my shoes, or just something that I do and don't even think about. That seems like a more beneficial lifestyle that will lead to more of that sense of flow that we're talking about, flowing and knowing of the sanctity of this moment. I'm going to keep that one in the back of my
Being
head.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Being comfortable with not knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, knowing that we don't know. it's a paradox.
Mm.
Would you say, the true essence of impermanence, of anicca, is in a way feeling that we're already dead? Because if everything is timeless, and how we explained before, we're living in the here and now. This is the same time that Abraham Lincoln gave his speech. I like that. Then in a way, we don't, it's a hard way to put it in words, but in a way we don't exist. In a way we're already dead. We were never born. It's a weird sense of, it seems bleak and it seems nihilistic, but it's not. With the right mindset, it's actually liberating. So would you have a better way to describe that sense of impermanence?
Yeah, so any kind of separate self-identity is dead. So we look at a chair, okay? A chair is just made up of parts, period. There's no such thing as a chair. Even the chair leg is made up of fibers of wood, is made up of atoms,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And these atoms, these fibers of wood contain within them centuries of air, water, soil, sunlight. There are specific conditions in which the physical fibers of a chair can exist. Outside of those conditions that are here or not here, that chair cannot exist in that form, right? I mean, think about a chair, a quote unquote chair inside of a supernova star, a star going supernova. Not going to look very cherry anymore, right? So as we imagine ourselves to be these separate self-identities, yeah, that is dead. These are like dead words, dead personas. But when we see into impermanence, we can also see into interbeing, interconnectedness. And it's another one of those things that's so in Buddhism, there's these three marks of reality: impermanence, no self, and dukkha, suffering, dissatisfaction. So these are marks of reality, and reality is so vividly and expansively clear, and we're not separate from reality, that it's difficult to grasp at it. But literally, this body speaking to you right now, and I'm guessing, this Gary, although, maybe Gary's on Lepton 9 of the Zugoplex province, streaming, to planet Earth. I don't know. But
I am.
this body on Earth, as far as I know, is literally not separate from the sunlight. The sun is in me. And this is fundamental to my existence. The oxygen that is available, the conditions that are here right now are not separate from me. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, a cloud never dies. You, the real you, does not die. But that's not this separate self-identity. That's not this Abraham Lincoln with a big tall hat, never dies and is floating in the clouds, watching over American exceptionalism or something like that. But that this interbeing, this real you that is not separate from the clouds, the sun, the sky, the birds, me and you, separate from each other, this not separate self, this true self does not die, is free of birth and death, is not subject to birth and death.
Mm-hmm. And the key to becoming acquainted with that true self, in a way, paradoxically, is to kill the sense of the Gary, or the sense of your separate self in this bodily form, right?
You
So it's
don't need to
almost
kill it. It's just like a cloud. You don't need to kill a cloud. All you need to do is look at it. And
look
if
at
you
it
look
differently.
long enough, if you
Yeah.
look sincerely enough, you will see that cloud dissipate. And another cloud will show up another day, and that cloud will also dissipate. But what we can have is this seed or this faith in the dissipation of a cloud, the dissipation of our separate self-identity whenever it comes up, whether it's angry or depressed or fearful or traumas are coming up. We experience that, and it's alive and it's difficult, but we also know very deeply, and we have faith that it's a temporary kind of formation. It's not going to stay like that. So when we have that level of awareness, we can take care of that experience. We can have this parental mind towards that experience rather than reacting to it, feeding it. going to our coping mechanisms or trying to fight against it, trying to kill it. Because all of that is just going to feed into that habit energy of self-fixation, that habit energy of grasping onto a separate self-identity, which isn't there.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. The parental, would you say like a parental fixation or something like that? A parental, almost like
Parental
a
mind, like
parental mind.
caretaker, the mind of a caretaker. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and it's really just you taking care of yourself. Yeah, it's a sense of discernment. Yeah. Yeah, man. This is good. I like this. This is very good. This is very I don't know actually. I'm digesting it in the moment, but I like this. This is a good combo. Yeah. It's all about discernment. I mean, putting it simply, right? Summing up the path. It's like it's almost like figuring out that we are responsible for all of our actions here, and becoming aware first of all, and then recognizing that we do have the power to discern, and then from there discerning, and then acting from that hopefully wise discernment, that parental mind. And that's, putting it very simply, that seems like the path to me, and it seems like the very, very simplified version of Buddhism. It's being able to just make the right choices for yourself, right? Just being wise in your actions so that one doesn't suffer anymore. And that's through, we don't suffer anymore by almost like what you thought was suffering is a little bit different. Like your idea of what is suffering is not exactly suffering in a way. It's through a re-examination of what you thought the self was. And then it's like another layer, but it's really not. It's very hard to put into words. Hopefully you can understand what I'm saying. It's like yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about now, but it's it's like just another viewpoint on what you thought yourself was. And then from that other viewpoint of the self is acting differently in a way, just acting differently of the self. It's a different way to act. It's a different self to act from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a renewal. It's a
renewal.
refresh and a restart point.
But it's
and you
like
act from there.
constant, right? It's not like, I mean, I talked about this earlier in the conversation. I felt like, I asked you about a second life, but isn't it almost like you're always restarting and starting this life in every circumstance, in every interaction, in every moment, essentially? It's the paradox. It's like every moment is new. So that means it's really just this, it's like, it's really all just this one moment, but it's really a start and restart in every moment. And that's like the weird duality, but it's really a non-dual aspect to it. It's that, like, the fact that it's a restart, it's a start and a restart, is actually makes it constant, if that makes sense. It's like a constant reincarnation, if that makes sense. And that seems to be like that sense of flow that one could reach through this re-examining of the self, and then discerning from the self, and then acting out differently from this other discernment of the self. And yeah, then thus peace ensues in one's life, it seems. I hope that made sense. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I just spew nonsense. I hope that made sense. Oh, man.
Well, it just brings to mind that it is kind of a dynamic situation.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of that, you don't know when a effect from past causes is going to come up. And you also don't know when the effect of a current action is going to come up in the future.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know. So we might live our best life for 5 or 10 years, and then this thing comes up. this suffering, this in the body or the mind. Oh, you've got cancer. Oh, you become start getting panic attacks. We don't. This is karma, cause and effect. So we don't know when this action that we're taking right now is going to bear fruit.
Yeah.
So in the midst of that, intention is very, very important. That you have this nourished and rich intentionality to do good deeds and to to face the karmas, to face the effects, to face the experiences, whatever's going on right now. It's this willingness to face that with a letting go quality of mind, and then to keep feeding that intention to do good, to help, to be generous, to offer out, to do good deeds, regardless of the effect. You kind of detach from the effect. Don't focus much on the effect from what you do. Focus on the acting itself from the clear, strong, good intention.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the key.
And then things work out, even though it's quite a dynamic arising and passing away, self experience, coming and going reality. And that is what it is. But you don't have to wait for a tragedy to befall you to realize that. You don't have to wait a minute, what's that in the sky? And it's a giant, meteor that's coming down through the atmosphere. Gary, upload this quickly, before it's not going to matter because, it's going down. You don't have to wait for that to realize how transformational every moment of our life is.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems like it always takes a meteor, though, metaphorically. It always takes a meteor for
To wake
one's
us up,
life.
right? To
Yeah.
kind of show us the clear picture of the immediacy of life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then once you get the meteor, it's hard to see past it. It's hard to really see past that.
Right.
This flow, this new sense of self is really, in a way, it's like a current of cause and effect. That's almost how I see it in my mind, in a way. Just visualizing karma. It's like it's a current of karma. It's a current, like I see my life as just beyond this body. This body is just like a result of the cause and effect of this body, if that makes sense. Like it's just like the re-examining of the self for me has been that like all of my actions are going to have some kind of repercussion in the future. Yeah, so it's like that's the really big wake-up call. That's the really big re-dawning of the self for me, at least, has been that I gotta smarten up or else I'm gonna keep suffering. I think that's kind of what you probably realized in a way as well. What people do realize on the path is that this path is paved by good. It's like the path is paved by good intentions and then good actions. And if you, I don't even know how to explain it, man. It's like seeing yourself as just like the action, not even like you said, not expecting the result from the action.
Doing only.
Yeah, just doing.
Experiencing only.
And that's where the flow is. If one could resonate at that, that's where the flow is. But don't even get attached to that idea because that's just another attachment. So it's like, yeah, if you can find that flow of just doing, just being, that it's sattvic, it's just like you're not building any karma. There's no, because in a way, right? If ideally, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't want to build karma so that ideally we don't become reborn. At least from popular scriptures, that's the essence, right? So it's not that, and that's how we do it, is that we don't expect anything in return. As this cause and effect thing that we call a human being, how we escape in a way and liberate from the chains of karma is that we do, like you said, we just do. And when we do, we don't expect anything from that doing, and thus we break the chain of the cause and effect. So there's just cause, I guess, or is there even no cause? It's just a freeing from the binding of karma altogether.
There's a lot of ways to approach freeing oneself from the binding of karma. There's a more of a non-dualistic, non-humanistic Zen approach of, everyone's already enlightened, so don't worry about it. But there's a more realistic, humanistic approach to not so much levels or aspiring to get to a higher level, but focusing, recognizing where you are, where you actually are, what your actual situation is. So we can imagine that we're in this enlightened state, but we're actually rejecting our own religion. So there's a religion of habituation, there's a religion of views, there's a religion of perspectives, there's a religion of kind of self-fixated entrapment that we find ourselves in. So we're predictable, we're controllable, we're manipulatable, we're fearful, we have a lot of desire, all these kinds of things that are just that we have deep inside of us. So we have to mainly focus, like what we talked about at the beginning, on the sila, being a good person, doing good deeds, doing acts of generosity, refraining more from unskillful activities and doing more skillful activities. Now there's this space where you can go to a meditation center. You can watch a video like this. You can listen to a Dharma talk. You can attend a meditation retreat. You can go for a camping trip, because people who aren't able to regulate their sila, their behavior skillfully, they can't do any of these things. It's not consumable. It's not approachable for them. So once we get to that point where we can do these things, that's when we start to find out about our religion, what we're actually following, the habituation that's ingrained in our mind. And from that point, we can start to work with it using insight. We can recognize the truth of impermanence. We can recognize the truth of no real, true, separate self entity through our experiences in meditation, but then we need to apply that to this real situation that we find ourselves in. Mm-hmm. And it might be empty. That real situation, yes, is empty of a separate self entity, but it is the situation that we find ourselves in. Mm-hmm. It's just like trying to, it's like trying to jump off a building and fly, because you know that in space there's no gravity and we're in space. Well, it doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So it's a very practical, grounded approach to being willing to be in the situation that we're in. You don't need lofty ideals or ideas about it. You're willing to face this situation. Yeah. And that can be very liberating, and it can also be very, we can feel burdened by oh my gosh, I'm in this situation. But there's this suffering and this difficulty is like the mud of our life. And without that mud, there's no lotus. There's no joy, happiness that blooms out of it. So that mud is actually there for a reason. We can make use of it. And you shouldn't be discouraged by that. Get involved. Show up. Get involved in this path. Mm-hmm. Do good deeds. Go for a walk in nature. Join a meditation community, online or in person. Listen to Dharma talks. Keep asking, keep looking into this situation, and you can realize more and more deeply that truth of not someone, not something, nowhere to go, nothing to do, doing only, experiencing only, kind of breaking these chains of karma and this suffering of a self-fixated existence that keeps coming up again and again and again. But we have to be strong to break those chains, even though they're already, in some sense, they are empty.
Yeah. In some sense, they are.
They're chains of air.
Chains
Cloud
of air?
chains. Yeah, the chains of self-fixation are made of clouds, so you don't need to break them, but you do need to look at them to see them dissolve.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah. Be consistent. I like that. I think that's the most important thing that I'm getting from this, at least in this moment, is the consistency to this whole thing. The consistency to show up here and now, which even sounds paradoxical, just me saying that, because there's nothing that we have to be consistent in to be here and now. But it almost is, in a way. It's almost like you have to remind oneself to arrive where we always were, where we always are. It's simple.
Finish with a few songs.
With songs, yeah. Do you have something you want to share?
The temple where I'm staying at right now, this Mahayana temple, the monks here, we actually have a practice of singing songs. So
Okay.
when the people come to stay at the temple and join in the meditation practices, one of the things we do is kind of sing together. All right. So sing a little bit together. Happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. No longer in a hurry. Happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Somewhere to go, something to do. But I don't need to hurry. Okay, second time, everybody can sing along. Deep breath. Happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. No longer in a hurry. Happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Somewhere to go, something to do. But I don't need to hurry. Okay?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I wish I could have sang along with the audio, but I didn't want to mess it up. I don't know how the timing would have been different, but it was still beautiful, just you singing. It's wonderful. I like that. I mean, what is the name of that? Can I look up? I don't
There's
mind
a
if I ask.
whole, yeah, if you look up on YouTube for Plum Village playlist,
Okay.
then you'll find all kinds of songs in that kind of style and tradition. Really wonderful music to listen to. But that song is called Happiness is Here and Now.
It is. It's wonderful. Well, thank you, Bhante. I mean, do you have any last words other than the song? Anything you want to get off your chest?
Well, I just appreciate you having me here again, Gary, and anybody out there who's on the path and um, dealing with any discouragement or confusion, just try to remember that this path has been walked on by many people before, that it is completely possible to transform your suffering, your trauma, that there are wonderful, compassionate, wise people in the world, and that it's just a matter of you taking the steps in the right direction to connect with them, and they can support you on your path. Okay, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, wisdom, and effort that you brought to the conversation. Definitely a unique individual, Bhante. You're very stoic. Something about your energy I can feel through the screen. So I wish you all the best for the future. And I thank you, the listener, the future listener, for tuning in and listening to this long. But yeah, other than that, peace out. Thank you.